home on Old Sunset Trail in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They were there for routine work. What they found instead made headlines around the world. The bodies of two-time cked on February 26, 2025, two maintenance workers walked up to a large adobe-style My Award winner Gene Hackman, his wife Betsy Arakawa, and one of their three dogs. For nearly 2 weeks, nobody knew what had happened. The story that followed wasn't the dramatic, shadowy mystery that tabloids rushed to suggest. It was something quieter, and in some ways sadder. A story about isolation, illness, and how easily two people who loved each other could slip away without anyone noticing. This is what investigators and medical examiners actually found. Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to the property on Old Sunset Trail in Hyde Park, just outside Santa Fe, on the afternoon of February 26. According to the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, deputies arrived to find site index equals 9-1, Gene Hackman, 95, his wife Betsy Arakawa, 64, and one of the couple's dogs deceased inside the home, /site. The bodies were discovered by two maintenance workers, later identified in reporting as Jesse Kessler. Site index equals 5-1. A contractor who had worked for the couple for 16 years, /site, and a colleague. Kessler made the 911 call. Investigators quickly noted troubling details. Hackman was found on the floor of the home's mudroom, near the back door, with site index equals 7-1, a walking cane, and a pair of sunglasses nearby. /site, Arakawa was found on the floor of a bathroom on the other side of the house, close to a space heater that had reportedly been knocked over. One of the couple's three dogs, believed to be their Australian Kelpie mix, was found dead inside a crate in a closet near her body. The other two dogs were found alive on the property. Both bodies showed clear signs of having been there for some time: decomposition, bloating, and in Arakawa's case, mummification of her hands. That level of decomposition, combined with the fact that two adults had apparently died without anyone noticing, is what first pushed this from a routine death investigation into something authorities publicly labeled suspicious. A search warrant affidavit noted that the front door was found unlocked or ajar, though there were no signs of forced entry. In the initial hours and days after the discovery, both investigators and Hackman's family leaned toward one working theory: carbon monoxide poisoning. It was a reasonable first guess. Two people found dead in the same home, in different rooms, without visible trauma. A gas leak was the most common explanation for that kind of scenario, and would have accounted for both deaths at once. Hackman's daughter, Elizabeth Leslie Hackman, spoke to reporters shortly after her father's death and said she believed carbon monoxide could be behind it. She told outlets that her father had been in remarkably good health for his age. He practiced Pilates and yoga several times a week, she said, and hadn't had any major surgeries in the months before he died. Given that, she felt a toxic gas leak was the most likely explanation for two sudden, simultaneous deaths. The New Mexico Gas Company was brought in to inspect the home's gas lines. They found no leaks. Fire officials tested the home and found nothing consistent with a carbon monoxide event. That theory didn't hold up, but the real answer, when it came, was arguably stranger than a gas leak. On March 7th, 2025, roughly a week and a half after the bodies were found, New Mexico's chief medical examiner, Dr. Heather Jarrell, held a press conference to lay out what the state's investigation had actually determined. Her findings reframed the entire story. According to Jarrell, site index equals 6-1, Betsy Arakawa had died first, likely around February 11th, of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare and often fatal infection spread primarily through the droppings, urine, and saliva of infected rodents, especially deer mice, which are common throughout New Mexico. /site, Jarrell said there were site index equals 8-1. No other significant natural disease findings, /site, in Arakawa's case. The hantavirus infection was the cause of death full stop, and it was ruled entirely natural. Hantavirus infections in humans are rare, but serious. Site index equals 2-1. New Mexico has recorded 136 such cases of /site. The most plausible reading of that detail, combined with the advanced Alzheimer's diagnosis, is that Hackman, alone in the house, likely unaware his wife had died, may have gone an extended period without eating properly in his final days. That detail connects to perhaps the most heartbreaking part of the medical examiner's findings. Investigators believe Hackman, likely did not know Arakawa had died because of his advanced Alzheimer's. It's possible he was simply unaware that his wife of more than 3 decades was gone in another part of the house and continued living alone for roughly a week afterward until his own heart gave out. Both autopsies confirmed something else worth stating plainly. Neither body showed any signs of trauma, internal or external. There was no violence, no injury, no indication that a third party had been involved in either death. Investigators were able to reconstruct a rough timeline using something outside the house entirely: digital records. Arakawa's phone and email activity stopped abruptly on February 11th. She sent no more texts, made no more calls, opened no more emails after that date. Based on that digital silence and the state of her body, Dr. Gerald placed her death on or around February 11th, 2025. Hackman's death was estimated at around a week later, on or around February 18th. That gap, 9 days in which Betsy Arakawa's body lay in the bathroom while her husband continued living elsewhere in the house, is the detail that made this story so unsettling to the public and so tragic to those who knew the couple. A pacemaker recovered from Hackman's body, investigators noted, could also help narrow the exact time of his death, since the device logs cardiac activity. One of their 3 dogs, found dead in a crate in a closet near Arakawa's body, likely died of dehydration sometime after her death, unable to access food or water. The couple's other 2 dogs were found alive, roaming the property. Evidence. Investigators believe that they'd had at least some access to food and water for a period of time, which is part of what supports the theory that both Hackman and Arakawa had been dead for an extended stretch before they were discovered. By the time the medical examiner's office closed the book on the case, what had briefly looked like the setup for a Hollywood-style mystery turned out to be something far more ordinary and far more human. There was no break-in, no struggle, no poisoning, no gas leak, no foul play of any kind. Instead, there was a couple in their 90s and 60s, living quietly and privately in a home outside Santa Fe, largely out of the public eye by choice. Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist, appears to have contracted a rare but naturally occurring infection while doing yard work. Gene Hackman, already living with advanced Alzheimer's and severe heart disease, was left alone in the house afterward, and, investigators believe, may not have understood that his wife had died. Roughly a week later, his own heart failed. Santa Fe County Sheriff Adon Mendoza, addressing reporters alongside the medical examiner, emphasized that the investigation had found nothing to suggest criminal wrongdoing. The case, for law enforcement purposes, was closed as a tragic but entirely natural sequence of events. It's worth stepping back from the final days and remembering the nearly 6 decades that came before them, because that's the part of Gene Hackman's story that actually earned him a place in film history. Hackman didn't come up easily. He trained at the Pasadena Playhouse in California, where, according to widely told accounts from those years, he and his classmates were considered among the least likely in their class to succeed. He was reportedly voted least likely to succeed by his peers. It was there that he became friends with fellow struggling actor named Dustin Hoffman, and the two would go on to have long, celebrated careers running roughly in parallel. Hackman spent years scraping by in small stage roles and television bit parts before his first real film break came with a supporting role in Bonnie and Clyde in 1967, playing Buck Barrow, brother to Warren Beatty's Clyde. It earned him his first Academy Award nomination and put him on Hollywood's radar for good. For years later came the role that would define him for a generation. Popeye Doyle, the relentless, morally messy narcotics detective in William Friedkin's The French Connection, 1971. It won Hackman the Academy Award for Best Actor and remains one of the defining performances of American crime, one of his most beloved. Across more than 80 films, Hackman built a reputation few actors ever achieve: total believability, whether the role called for menace, vulnerability, or comedy. Directors and co-stars who worked with him consistently pointed to the same thing: an unforced, natural quality that never felt like acting at all. Hackman's health struggles were not new in 2025. They'd shaped the last 2 decades of his life. In 1990, at age 60, he underwent an angioplasty procedure after suffering chest pains that radiated down his arm during a trip. Doctors at the time said the blockage was caught in time and that he had never previously had heart problems. Speaking to Larry King on CNN years later, Hackman downplayed how frightened he'd been by the procedure, saying it happened quickly and that he didn't fully grasp how serious it was at the time. Asked whether he feared for his health generally, he said he tried to take care of himself, and that his main concern as he got older wasn't for himself but for making sure his wife and family were provided for. By 2004, doctors told Hackman that his heart could no longer handle the physical and emotional stress of film production, a major factor in his decision to step away from acting. His final on-screen role came in 2004's Welcome to Mooseport. He formally retired in 2009. His last public appearance at a major awards show came at the Golden Globes, where he received a Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2012, at 81, Hackman was involved in a bicycle accident in Islamorada, Florida, when a pickup truck struck the back of his bike. He was flown to a trauma center in Miami as a precaution, though his spokesperson later said the impact was light, and he was released after a few days with minor injuries. In retirement, Hackman largely disappeared from public life. He and Arakawa settled into a quiet existence in Santa Fe, where he spent his time painting, riding, fishing, and writing. He co-authored several historical fiction novels with archaeologist and novelist Daniel Lenihan, and wrote additional Western and crime fiction on his own. He once said writing appealed to him precisely because it was something he could control alone, without a film crew waiting on him to perform. By the early 2020s, Hackman was rarely seen in public at all. One of his last known public appearances with Arakawa came in 2023, outside a restaurant near their home, where he appeared frail and was seen using a cane and leaning on his wife for support, a detail that, in hindsight, lines up closely with what the autopsy later revealed about his declining health. News of Hackman's death drew tributes from across Hollywood. Clint Eastwood, who directed and co-starred with Hackman in Unforgiven, released a statement calling him one of the finest actors he'd ever worked with and saying his performances were always real, never anything less than perfect, and adding that beyond the work, Hackman had been a close friend he would miss deeply. Actress Gwyneth Paltrow, who co-starred with Hackman in The Royal Tenenbaums, shared a tribute on social media as well. His daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, and his granddaughter Annie released a joint statement after his death, saying that while millions admired him for his acting, to them he was simply dad and grandpa, and that his loss left an emptiness words couldn't fill. Hackman was married twice. First to Faye Maltese from 1956 until their divorce in 1986. She passed away in 2017, and then to Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist more than 30 years his junior, whom he married in 1991. By his daughter's account, Arakawa played a central role in keeping him healthy and grounded in his later years, watching over his health closely as his condition declined. In the end, there was no hidden mystery inside the house on Old Sunset Trail. No foul play, no cover-up, nothing sinister. What investigators found was something far more quietly devastating. An elderly man in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's, living out his final days unaware that the woman who had cared for him for over 30 years was already gone. It's a story about illness, isolation, and how even someone who spent decades in the brightest spotlight in the world can, at the very end, simply go unnoticed for too long.